Hi, my name is John Ferguson, and I have had the privilege of being a part of NewThing from the very beginning. We started out as a handful of church planters, and our vision was to be a catalyst for a network of reproducing churches. Well, then our networks began to multiply, and we changed the vision to be a catalyst for networks of reproducing churches. Well, since that time, we have begun to see God moving in places all over the world. More and more amazing churches and networks have started and are coming together. Our vision now is to be a catalyst for movements of reproducing churches. Why are we so passionate about movement? Well, because when God moves, people find their way back to Him. And if we can reach just one person, we can reach a neighborhood. If we can reach a neighborhood, we could reach a city. And if we can reach an entire city like Chicago or New York or Nairobi, we can reach the world. I want to welcome you to NewThing Online. I'm so glad you've joined us for this broadcast. We want to bring you some of the most insightful voices and practitioners in the world of church planting. It's our hope and prayer that these online training opportunities will accomplish three objectives. One, we want to better equip NewThing network leaders and pastors. So network leaders, use the content from this online training to jumpstart your monthly network calls. And pastors for NewThing, we hope you will use this content to train your church staff and leaders. Secondly, we believe these broadcasts will create synergy throughout NewThing. We all know vision leaks, right? And we believe experiencing this training online will remind us all of why we do what we do and how together God is catalyzing movements of reproducing churches all over the world. Finally, we believe this kind of training gives prospective church planters one more reason to jump in with NewThing. God has blessed NewThing with access to some of the most cutting-edge thought leaders and practitioners. We know that we all can't afford to go to them, so we plan to bring them to you with fresh, new content every month. So with that in mind, we need your feedback and input. Let us know who you want to hear from or any topics you would love to have addressed. And thanks again for all you do to help more and more people find their way back to God.
Well, hey, NewThing Network, we're so excited to be with you and just to be able to have a conversation with you today. We are huge fans of the NewThing Network, and just this idea of reproducing churches that reproduce movements is really near and dear to our heart. We're Justin and Trisha Davis. We're fellow church planters, and we just have a heart to be able to share with you today about something that we struggle with over the course of our ministry, and sometimes we've gotten right. Hopefully, we'll be able to share some wisdom about how we can attract and how we can retain high-quality volunteers.
Justin and I planted our very first church plant in 2002, and we were much younger than the church planters we are today.
It's true.
And we realized that we had a really healthy church. Over the course of 3 years, our little church plant grew from 12 to 800. And that is both a curse and a blessing, because with growth comes the need for volunteers. And if you're not familiar with our story, 3 years into our church plant, as we were giving and just striving to really have the best ministry, to empower volunteers and to have a healthy church, while we gave to the church, our marriage really took a toll, and our marriage ended up imploding, and we got out of ministry. And so for the next 4 years, we were out of ministry and just working on a lot more on our marriage than we had in the past.
Some of the best years of our life, I'll just be honest with you.
It really was. I just didn't mean to press them. But in 2009, after going through intense restoration, we decided to step back into ministry, where Justin became a campus pastor. And from that moment on in 2009, we realized over 20 years of doing marriage and ministry together, that there were so many things that we put into place when it came to just with good intentions of empowering people to be a part of ministry that had more to do with than just the people. And so we want to unpack with you 3 principles that haven't just shaped us over the past 6 years as we've been back in the ministry, but we're brand new church planners. Because we're crazy, and we're just...
We just find ourselves in a new season. We just moved just a few months ago to the northwest side of Indianapolis to plant a brand new church called Hope City Church. And so as we were kind of crafting what we wanted to say to the NewThing Network today, one of the realizations was, hey, we don't just need to be teaching these things. We are trying to implement them along the way. So we're not just distributors of information, we're actually practitioners along with you. And so in this new season, we realized that the health of our church is really going to be dependent upon the health of our volunteers. And the health of your church is going to be very dependent upon the health of your volunteers. And so if we can help impart some wisdom to you guys today, or just some practical strategy of how you can attract and retain high-level volunteers, then your church will be all that God has created it to be. And so 3 practical principles that we want to share with you. The first is this: attracting volunteers is a matter of your heart. Attracting the volunteers that you desire in your ministry is really going to be a reflection of your heart. The heart of the leader will always determine the health of your team. And I tried to cheat this principle. I've tried to allow myself to do things for God rather than spend time with God. In fact, that's the number one temptation of ministry, is to equate doing things for God with a relationship with Him. One of the things I've learned the hard way in my own life is when giftedness outweighs character, implosion just isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so as you begin to think through how to attract the type of list volunteers, the type of caliber level 10 leaders that you need for your ministry, unfortunately it really starts with your heart personally. When we are unhealthy, what happens is we'll begin to use people rather than empower them. And this played out really a lot in our marriage relationship. Trisha is very gifted in a lot of different areas.
Well, I'm good at a lot of things. I'm a master of none. So let's just make sure.
Let me just say this. She's amazing at everything.
It's not true.
That's the marriage points for me.
It's not true.
Okay. But what would happen is if I needed a small group leader, Trish, can you do that for me? If I needed a worship leader, hey, Trish, you're gifted at that. Can you do that for me? And it became this pattern that it didn't just happen in our marriage relationship. I began to look to other people for what they could give our church rather than what I could bring out of them. I didn't really capitalize on their giftedness. I capitalized on their willingness to volunteer. And if you're going to be the leader that God has for, desires for you to be, and you're going to have the volunteer teams that He longs for you to have, as a leader, our job isn't just to use people, it's to empower them. It's to help them identify their gifts. And that starts with your motives. It starts with your heart. And if you want to see the best come out of people, and if you want to see people not just serve in the church, but be leveraged to know their gifts and use those gifts, it comes as you as a leader say, God, would you right-size my expectations? Would you deal with my heart and allow me to be the leader that you have in mind?
Because when leadership is driven out of fear, what happens is you look to glean followers rather than leaders. And Justin and I, we have a ministry of going first, both with our marriage story and both in ministry in this new season of going from this, what we joke is like this national platform where we go around the country speaking, to our teeny tiny church where all these things we've talked about in leadership are really being tested. And it began before the first person walked in the doors of our brand new church plant. We decided instead of looking to followers of Justin and Trisha Davis, we would look to leaders. And so we've empowered other senior pastors that have been dear friends of ours on our advisory team. And we have allowed them to speak life into us, to know that if we're going to equip people to lead, we have to make sure that our heart is in the right place. And honestly, when we shared with people that we were going to plant a brand new church, there were 2 kinds of people. There were those that knew our story, knew our hearts, and they were excited for us, and they just thought this was amazing. They were a very small percentage. Then you had this other set of people who very clearly told us that we were committing career suicide.
Which is always encouraging when you're looking for affirmation for this vision that God has placed in your heart.
Yeah, but because we knew who we were in Christ, and we knew what God had called us to, it right-sized our expectations going into this church plant so that when we go and speak at another maybe really large church, and then the next week we're back at Hope City and there are 15 people there, we can still lead and empower people, not as followers, but as leaders, because our heart, it's an overflow that we want to invite them into this vision of changing the north side of Indianapolis. And as we champion that vision, as we champion our heart, it allows us to equip other leaders to do the same.
And the reality is that my church, your church, the movement that you're trying to start, it's only going to grow at the rate that you empower others, right? You can be the most talented, gifted communicator. You can have the most rocking worship. But if we're not allowing our heart to be transformed, to pour into other people and to empower them to be all that God's created them to be, then the movement that we desire through the NewThing network, it's not going to go any further than us. And so first principle, attracting high-level volunteers. It's a matter of our heart. It's a matter of your heart. And that's the first principle.
And secondly, attracting volunteers will be a test of your vision. As we said earlier, Justin and I get to experience a lot of different church culture, a lot of people doing amazing things. And when you're a church planner, you would love to do those amazing things, but you realize when you only have 15 or 50 or 100 people coming, that's not maybe the vision you had in mind, but it's where God has you. And it's been a testing for us as we've equipped volunteers of our teeny tiny church to be okay in the season and have right-size expectations for the church we are as we dream for the church we hope to be. And this came to fruition. We've met 8 times total as a church.
Yep. We're on the fast track to growth. We're on the fast track to launch, baby.
Brand new. And I've been a worship leader for 20 years, and so I've led with someone playing an acoustic, and sometimes whoever's playing the acoustic is leading as well. Well, we've had a group of people who are like, I want to get involved in music ministry. Like, I play an instrument. I lead worship.
You know those people that show up to your church the very first week and they want to lead worship the next? Those people are just like flies to sugar. I mean, they just swarm church plants. I mean, I don't know. They come to our church and they're like, hey, the music sounds great. Can I lead next week? I mean, it's incredible.
This is not in our notes. We're kind of working through this. So
it's incredible.
I'm like,
where do all these people come from that just want to lead worship all the time?
But as a leader, I want to empower volunteers. And so I felt this pressure like, I need to get a band together. The problem is that that's not my skill set. I can lead worship, but I don't play an instrument and I don't read music. And God has not called me to lead a group of people I'm incapable of leading. And so I had to go back to our vision, the vision of where we are in our current season, and recast vision to those volunteers to say, hey, this is not where we are right now, but hang in there, because our hope and prayer is that someday soon that's where we'll be.
And here's the deal. You don't need people. You need the right people.
Right.
And you need people that align with your vision, that know your heart, that trust your leadership. I met with this guy. There's a church that's partnering with us to help launch our church. And so we meet at this particular church. We meet there on Sunday evenings. And so this guy shows up to our launch team meeting. And when you're brand new, you notice when there's somebody new there, right? There's like 14 of us, and then somebody new shows up. It's like a 10% growth, okay? And so you know that church growth is happening because one person new walked in. And so this guy shows up on Sunday night to our launch team meeting. He attends the church that we're meeting at. And he's like, man, I love what you guys are doing. I'd love to get together for coffee this week. Well, as a church planter, that's all I do is coffee and multiple breakfasts. And so I schedule coffee with this guy. We sit down. He tells me a story. He was a worship leader at a church plant, about 50 miles away. They just moved to town. He'd love to send me his stuff. And I just said to him, I said, hey, my wife is helping lead worship right now, but we don't have a system set up to train people. We don't have a system set up to audition people. We don't have a system set up to schedule people. So you're just going to have to be patient.
We have a microphone and a mic stand.
Yeah,
that's about all we got rocking in that. Yeah.
And so we're just cutting edge. At least we're not using overhead projectors. But anyway, so I meet with this guy. I thought I shared vision with him. I thought I right-sized his expectations. And so he sends me these multiple WAV files over email the next week of he and his wife in their bedroom singing to a keyboard. And picture like 1986 Maranatha music, okay? And so he sends me this file. He's like, hey, here's my audition tape. Let me know when I can sing. And so I thought he was kind of joking. I'm like, hey, buddy, thanks so much for sending this to me. Once we get a leader in place, I'll circle back with you. So the next week he comes and he's like, hey, can we grab coffee? So we sit down for coffee, and he just goes off on me on how disappointed he is in the assimilation process of Hope City, that he clearly auditioned to be on the music team. He has a master's degree in church planting, which should have been a red flag from the very beginning. But anyway, and he just doesn't feel like I am doing my job as a pastor because I haven't assimilated him fast enough. And I said, you know what? Here's what I would like for to happen. I'd like to assimilate you to Mercy Road, which is the church that we're all attending on Sunday morning, because you don't need to be in Hope City. And you have to be willing to protect your vision. If you'll protect your vision, God will bring the right people. And I think so often what happens in church, and as we're trying to multiply churches so fast, and we feel the pressure to perform, what happens is we compromise vision to please people, or we compromise our vision to round out a team, and then our vision takes 3 or 4 steps back, or our vision takes a huge hit because we didn't wait for the right people, we just wanted warm bodies. And so if you're going to attract high-level volunteers, it's going to be a test of your vision, but if you'll protect the vision, God will bring you the right people. Mm-hmm. And then finally, attracting volunteers will be a growth engine to your leadership. One of the things that we've done over the last couple of weeks is we've been able to grow our launch team from about 12 to 14 people to about 50 people. And we've identified 5 different leaders of ministry in our church. We don't have a worship leader yet, but we have a person that's going to lead our student ministry. We have a person that's going to lead our what we call first impressions, or guest experience. We have a person that's going to lead our kids ministry, small groups, and something else that I'm forgetting that's really important. But anyway, we have 5 missions. And then we have worship too, but we're going to hire that person. But these are our 5 volunteers. And I told those 5 volunteers, I said, hey, if you want to recruit people as we are trying to build our teams, don't send emails, and don't ask me to make announcements. Don't ask me to have people sign up. Work the lobby. Work the lobby of Mercy Road because they're our sending church and they are telling their people to leave. Work the lobby of our launch team meetings when we have guests that come that haven't signed up for teams. We rely so much on mass announcements. Great leaders don't respond to mass announcements. Great leaders want to be recruited. Mm-hmm. Great leaders are looking for a personal connection to the leader to identify with. And so if you're going to attract high-level volunteers, you're going to have to step up your leadership and work the lobby and not rely on sign-up sheets, but call people to a significant role, not just a task. And I think so often in the church, we have a checklist of things that we have to get done because Sunday is coming. Every 7 days, we walk off the stage on Sunday afternoon and we think, oh my gosh, we have to do this again next week. And more often than not, we think we have to top ourselves the next week. And more often than not, then we compromise our vision and our leadership because we're just trying to plug holes rather than empower leaders.
So as we close, we just want to encourage you, regardless if you're a teeny tiny church like Justin and I, if you've been a part of a mega church, or maybe starting up a new ministry within a large church, the biggest lesson we have learned as we take into account our heart is we realize that people aren't a commodity, that God has given us the gift to come alongside people, even when it tests our vision. That when we get connected to our church body and we allow our church body to grow us as much as we grow them, that's when the church begins. That the gift of volunteering isn't waking up every day going, I've got to fill those slots. The gift of volunteering is waking up and saying, who do I get to partner with to unearth their calling? Yeah, and when someone unearths their calling, you won't have to convince them to come and volunteer. You'll have to convince them to not come. You'll have to convince them to have parameters about what it means to be a leader that leads well, no matter if it's at the church or if it's home, it's in the workspace. So be encouraged to take care of your heart, to trust the vision. And on those dark days where it seems like everything just is going the wrong way, that God often uses our volunteers to grow us in our leadership.
Thanks, guys. We love you. We're cheering for you. And we're thankful for the NewThing Network.